The Brewdog Punk AF, brewed by the Scottish anti-establishment punk brewery that have created quite professional, really good tasting alcohol-free beer. So Brewdog started in 2007 when two friends decided to create a beer brand to shake up the traditional beer world. One of their key strengths is their eagerness to push the boundaries when it comes to marketing. And I'll get more into that soon because there's a lot to get into about what they've done, some of the boundaries that they've pushed, and some of the buttons, I guess, that they've pushed. But let's just start off with the review with looks. So this is a pretty simple can, and I think it does just enough to tell you it's alcohol-free beer without going over the top, which is something that I really like about my alcohol-free beers. I do enjoy the double entendre that I think they've gone for with Punk AF. So the punk alcohol-free could be one understanding of the AF. The other part could be punk as f***. So it's a bit immature, but you know, sometimes it's nice to be a little immature and have fun sometimes. So I like it. I think it's clever. It's a cool little can. I like the blue and the white. They've gone for this blue coloring that almost every alcohol-free version of a beer company has gone for. But they've done it in like a shield, and I think it's a cool looking can. Yeah, done a good job. Once poured, it produces great head with irregular bubbles. It's golden and cloudy and really, really inviting for that first sip because of the aroma it produces. So for looks, I've given it a solid 4.5 out of 5. So there's not much more they could do to improve it, in my opinion. Almost full marks, but like we've always got to give them a bit of room for improvement. As I mentioned already, it's got great aroma. It is hoppy and tropical, and it makes it incredibly difficult once it's open not to take that first sip. So I've actually given it top marks for aroma. It could just be that I was really thirsty when I was reviewing it. So I always do a little review away from the camera. And I was, may have been really thirsty when I was reviewing it, when I was doing it a few days ago. But even now, it smells really, really good, really hoppy, and makes you just want to take a sip. It was when I reviewed it was an evening after a tough day at work. And it just reminded me of all the IPAs that I used to drink, and it smelled really inviting. It wasn't too strong, but it wasn't too weak. It was just right. And yeah, I'm still reviewing it today. Like if I needed to make a change, I would, but I'd nevertheless score it the same score today as I did the other day. 5 out of 5 for aroma. It smells really, really good. Before I get into taste, let's dive into a bit of the history of Brewdog and some of their more famous marketing escapades. So one of their founders, James Watt, has said it on record that there's no such thing as bad marketing, or he agrees with the saying that there's no such thing as bad marketing, which is why the brewery has done quite a lot of controversial marketing adventures. He also said in a recent interview that they had to think outside the box because they were taking on these big, giant beer brands who had endless amounts of cash, endless amounts of money. They had to be a lot more strategic about how they marketed their beer, and they had to ensure that there'd be 10x return on whatever investment they made for the marketing. So there was some method behind the madness, but there was also a lot of madness. There's a really interesting documentary on this done by the BBC, which is on YouTube, that you can watch. I'll link it in the description. And then there's also an interview just recently with James by the I think it's called the CEO interview, or the CEO for a day, or Day of CEO. It's a podcast where they interview CEOs and go into some in-depth questions. It's about an hour long, and it's also really interesting to watch. But again, some of the more famous stunts that they've done or have been famous for is provocative beer names. So they've named their beers after things like illegal drugs or sexually suggestive language. Even this beer this alcohol-free, pretty simple, basic little, alcohol-free beer that they've got. They've named it Punk as Fuck or Punk AF. That could be taken in two ways. So again, they're not afraid even on their alcohol-free beers to be a little adventurous. They've done some really gross out ads. So they've done things like upsetting animal rights groups by filling taxidermied squirrels with their strongest beer and pouring it out of the taxidermied animals. They've also thrown cats at the establishment. So they've thrown cats out of helicopters. They were taxidermied cats as well, but it was kind of a snub to the establishment, and they also got in trouble for that. So a couple of things that have been very interesting. They've also got into a bit of trouble with their employees. So I believe it was over the COVID times that they were in the public eye for some toxic work environments that they were implementing. And this letter was signed by 300 employees saying that basically, James puts pressure on them. So James, the CEO. So yeah, lots and lots of marketing and limelight for the company. And, all news is good news. So I'm sure, the James and the marketing team are happy even to get this 300-person letter and to get some bad publicity, because it's all publicity. And as I mentioned, that the recent interview with the interview of a CEO, I think it's called, or something like that. They're trying to go back on how bad their past was and say, look, we realized we did a bad thing. But I wonder if that's also just part of their marketing ploy. Now they're becoming a bigger brand. They're trying to build a bigger, they're trying to become part of the establishment. They've got to regress on some of their poor decisions back in the day. But the poor decisions got them to where they are, and it's not like they're going off and refunding money for the poor decisions or paying their employees back. Like it or hate, Brewdog, they have used shock value to get themselves out there and known, and they do create really tasty beers. Like, this is a really good tasting and smelling alcohol-free beer. So sometimes that shocking marketing helps get them, gets a foot in the door, takes away a bit of the limelight from the Heinekens and the Carlsbergs, and for that I'm really happy, because their beer tastes significantly better. So on to taste, and it is, as I say, a really, really tasty beer. It is missing a little bit of the mouthfeel that I think just almost all alcohol-free beers have. They almost all struggle a little bit for that mouthfeel that an alcoholic beer has. But that's probably about the only thing I can fault it. It's otherwise really, really tasty. Lots of fizz. Even now I've talked for 5 minutes with it being open. It still has enough carbonation, and it's makes you want to take another sip. So it's got the right level of bitterness, but sweetness. It's just tasty all around. There is some tropical notes in there, and they say that there's a bit of pineapple, which I can definitely taste. It's just a really nice summertime kind of beer. And I could easily see myself drinking a box of these at a sports game, or at a lake in summer. So I have knocked a couple of points off, because the mouthfeel isn't quite what I'd want, and also the aroma makes it seem like it's going to be such an amazing tasting beer, and delivered it's still a really tasty beer, but it's not as amazing as that aroma is. Nevertheless, it's getting an 8 out of 10 for me, so it's easily one of the highest scoring beers I've reviewed. And finally, purchasing. Look, I can get it online. I can get it simply enough online, but it's not in any of my local shops here in Germany. And for me to grab a box of beer, I can't just race to the shop. I have to plan it out and book it online, and I can't mix in a box of beers into the shopping list. It's going to be all bought separately. So look, a lot of the other beers I've given a 3 out of 5 for for the fact that I can buy it simply online, but I can only buy it online. And that's probably the same score I'm going to give Brewdog. They do have a bar in Berlin, and I wonder if it's more available in Berlin, and maybe Berlin's more their target market than Munich, where I'm based. But nevertheless, like 3 out of 5 is still a good score, because overall it gives them a 20.5 out of 25. So really good score. The same old question that I always ask is, does it go into my beer fridge? And the answer is maybe, probably yes. Price-wise, it's probably a little bit more than what I'd want to pay, for my regular everyday beer. And it's also, as I say, not very easy to get from the shop. But it's not in my fridge right now, but I definitely will get some for summer. I think it's a really nice go-to beer. It's also a really good beer for someone who doesn't drink alcohol-free beers and, maybe needs a little convincing about if they should drink one or not. So it's one I'd like to have in the fridge as a nice surprise for someone to try. And that's about it. Yeah. So thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. To see my Sunday afternoon beer, click here. And to see my Friday lunchtime, afternoon, after work beer, click over here. And yeah, thanks for watching. Cheers.